van to help decorate it.
I love this.
So she did a
So
beautiful heron
pretty.
on the sliding.
Get ready for this bed. This bed is incredible. Such a good build. My little technologist heart is so happy. I love this Exploring Alternatives channel. They do so many different tours that are really cool. I just love like all the simple wood finishes too. I know we're not focusing on that this time, but I just think this is such a nice build. It's so pretty.
For the van, we bought a used 2015 Ford Transit, the one with the highest roof option so that I could stand up, and the medium length. So the medium length is nice because we can park in most parking spaces. We built everything in here from...
That's actually a note with van purchasing and van sizes too. When you get, I don't know the exact dimensions, I guess, but once you get to a certain depth, you have a very hard time parking, like if you wanted to go to the mall or the grocery store for things, and then you're just find yourself parking way at the back. Ours is about, I believe ours is 16 feet long, and we also can fit in any parking space that we want, and that's really nice. It's just, and it's same with like even fitting down certain residential roads and stuff like that. We're not oversized, so we don't have to worry about those constraints.
From scratch, so everything you see, all the woodwork was built by hand. It took us about 5 months to build the van, but the whole process was a lot longer, so shopping for the van.
This is a construction note. We'll talk about this later too, but I love that they used 2x2s for their cabinet build. Oftentimes we'll see in the construction of builds that they're using 2x4s, and those are very heavy. We only used 2x4s in one area for our bed because it required support for like our weight, especially 2 adults and a dog. But I think 2x2s are the move.
Doing all the research, designing, and playing around with different...
This whole build I can just see is technically beautiful from a technical perspective.
Ideas and options. It feels pretty amazing now to be in this space that we created ourselves. It's exactly what we wanted, and we're really happy with it.
It's so good.
So to start, we have the kitchen here. It's pretty basic and compact, but it's very functional. There's basically
It's so small.
3 areas. So we have the food prep area with a cutting board over here. Then we have an undermount sink. And at the end here, we have a small flip-up table. And we usually just put our butane cooktop on there.
So this is also a build that utilizes the space in front of the sliding doors to create a bigger kitchen. I love that.
Another thing that's on the counter is our charcoal water.
I also see that they don't have, actually let's go back for a sec. This stove that they have here, this is my favorite kind of portable camping stove. To build off of our camping stove conversation, I'm quite certain with this style of stove, you can leave I believe it's butane, you can leave the canister in the stove and you don't have to unhook it and hook it up every time. You can actually just pull it out, pop it on the counter, and turn it on. So to me, this feels like a much safer portable option. It's my preferred one. The only downside and why we didn't decide to go this route as well is because the canisters for these ones are actually a lot more difficult to find. So you'll have to make sure that you have to stock up on quite a few of them, which is a storage need. But I didn't want to worry about ever being in a position where we couldn't find the right fuel to have for our stove. And maybe it's regional. I don't know if maybe in some places in the States where this is more common, it's not as much of a concern. But this is just something that I wanted to be mindful of for ourselves, and if anybody else is looking into this option, I'd advise you maybe just to seek out how easy it is to source fuel for this option too. And also, and this is just the more environmental side of me, but the waste as well. I wouldn't want to be producing too much waste, and this is more a goal that my partner and myself have too. For our build, and even just in our day-to-day living, we try very hard to minimize how much waste we have. So at least with like the 20-pound propane tanks that we have for our stove that we're gonna install. We can swap those out or get them filled and continuously use them. I feel guilty throwing out too much garbage on a day-to-day basis. You'll see it in our build too when I actually get to the constructing part of it. Our build and the wood that we've used, I'd say, is probably 70% recycled at this point. When we purchased our house back in 2021, the house that we bought, we gutted the whole basement to redo it right away when we first bought it. And the basement had so much, the floor was raised about 4 inches off the ground. And I think that was for like a warmth thing, but it had a whole floor plan, like a whole huge square foot floor plate of plywood. So we got so much plywood that was in really good shape. Actually, it was all really good plywood, and a lot of 2x4s from where the floor was lifted from our basement demo. So we were able to salvage all of that, and we've been using that for our van build. We've just been cutting the 2x4s in half down into 2x2s so that we can construct our cabinets and stuff so they're not so big. But we've been very fortunate in that regard, and that's how, like, an area where we've been able to have a lot of cost savings, because the cost of wood did go up a lot during COVID, and I'm not quite sure if it's gone down yet, because we haven't had to purchase wood since we did the demo. So it's freed up our budget for other things that we've wanted to prioritize in our build, like our fridge and our Maxx-Air Fan and our plumbing setup and stuff. Like, we've more or less just had to save for the like utilities instead of indulging too much on the actual building materials. So the one thing we will have to buy brand new though, and I'll get into this at a later time too, but I think we want to do cedar or like wood slat roofs, or like wood slats on the roof to finish it, because I think it's just such a nice look. But the best option for that, due to its anti-mold and antibacterial properties, is cedar wood, and cedar wood is very expensive. But for the longevity of our build, we'll probably make that splurge. They might even mention the wood that they've used in this build here, actually.
Another thing that's on the counter is our charcoal water filter.
I love their spice rack. It's so cool. And the moss on the wall, that's so cute. Moss is such a good way to incorporate greenery into your space without requiring any maintenance. I actually do this in my in my work so frequently. In commercial interiors, we'll do moss walls, because you can have petrified moss that is not alive, and it has the same like vibe that plant life does, but you don't have to water it. I think sometimes there's some kinds of moss walls, or some companies of curators of moss walls or whatever, that require that you use a spray bottle and spray it down. But oftentimes it just can exist and look pretty and add some organic feelings to the space that you're in.
We get water from all sorts of different sources, and it's always sitting in these plastic jugs, so it's nice to be able to filter it before drinking it.
Oh, they filter it. That's kind of cool. This takes a lot of space, though. Like, that must be a really high priority for them to have that much counter space delegated to just water filtration.
It's like spices.
I love that.
Some mugs, and our dish rags, and also our cutting board.
This is really clever too. I really like being able to kind of just have everything like tuck away in its own space like this, and it's like it'll get jerked around, but it won't come flying out.
Boards and oils. We made some open shelving that's easily accessible, and it's stuff we use all the time, so it's nice to have it there.
I love that.
Over here in this little cubby, we have a small basket for fruits and vegetables. On the other side,
that's kind of neat. They don't have anything in front of the shelf to prevent it from coming out, though. From what it looks like here, I think down here, I don't feel like this lip is high enough to stop stuff from coming flying out. But I guess if they haven't added it at this point, it must not be a concern.
For fruits and vegetables.
I want to do like the hanging baskets for the fruits though too, like the it's like nylon or cotton or like whatever, like the net that like hangs on the underside. I think that's such a cute vibe too.
On the other side here, we have the fridge. It's a top-loading 12-volt Dometic. So this runs off of our solar power system. It's not a...
I like that it's raised. I don't like top-load fridges just from a practical perspective. We discussed this last time. But I think if I ever had one or had to get one, it would be like this, like built up off the ground so that you're not like hunched over, like pulling stuff out. Like you can kind of just like stay tall and just kind of, if you have to pull stuff out, you're not compromising your ergonomic comfort. So I think this is my favorite way I've seen a top load fridge incorporated. So I wonder what they put underneath.
Fridge, but we only keep the stuff that has to be refrigerated in there. All the other food is stored in other places in the van.
I wonder if there was a way though that they could utilize this to also use this as a countertop for cooking, just to increase the size of the cooking space, to be more comfortable for two people cooking.
Our solar power system. It's not a huge fridge, but we only keep the stuff that has to be refrigerated in there. All the other food is stored in other places in the van. We do lose a bit of counter space by having a top-loading fridge like this, but for us it was really the best option to maximize this space. We didn't want to build a drawer to put it in, and we find that we have quite enough counter space on this side.
Okay, so he does talk about that.
This kind of top-loading fridge is that it does get quite a bit of condensation on the inside, so every once in a while we have to sponge it up with a paper towel. But what is cool is that cold air sinks, so when you open it from the top, you're not losing a ton of cold air every time you open and close it.
So that's exactly why these fridges are much better at retaining their temperature as opposed to the side swing doors. Exactly why.
And then under the fridge here, we have a big drawer. This is where we put most of our dishes, pots, pans, cutlery. There's a simple little latch here that we've made. And
okay, I do really like this. I was skeptical about what they did at the bottom because I was like, oh, maybe they put utilities under there or just stuff that they don't grab for very often. But pots and pans are large, so having the fuller height drawer is so clever for that space. I love this. I think this is incredible.
And this is it. It looks a little chaotic in here, but it's very functional.
Awesome.
So the plumbing system is very basic, but it took us a lot of time to design this.
The one thing I will note, and maybe this is a personal preference, but I don't love faucets. This is design development stuff. I'm getting granular. I don't love faucets that don't have the detachable heads, especially if you have to use your sink to wash your dishes on a regular basis day to day, to rinse stuff off and the like. I wonder how they feel about it.
So the plumbing system is very basic, but it took us a lot of time to design this.
Oh, this is something I'm also personally not a huge fan of, I guess, just for ourselves. I'm not a big fan. I know that this is, I think, the easiest way to do a plumbing system. I see this all the time. You get the two large jugs underneath the cabinets. This is not my favorite option but I understand it for simplicity's sake. But the reason why it's not my favorite is because I feel like under the cabinets in your kitchen is it's really good real estate for storing kitchen related things, or even more practical stuff under the sink. Like you'd see more like garbage storage or cleaning storage. I feel like water tanks, gray water and fresh water and black water are really good elements as almost like space fillers. So if you have an area under the bed or just in a weird part of your van that nothing else really fits, I think it's good elements to put in those spaces. The other limitation too, my partner and I, when we were designing our van, one of our values was wanting to be off-grid for a full week without having to come into town or anywhere more urban for water fills. And so we did the math based off of our predicted water needs as well as our dog's predicted water needs, and we have come to the conclusion that in order to be comfortable off grid for a week, we would need 25 gallons of fresh water. And so that does not fit underneath in one of these standard jugs. This is again subjective and based on your values and how you intend to do van life, because there is a simplicity to being able to access water this way and pull out the jug and just fill it somewhere. What we're more partial towards doing in our build and what we're hoping to incorporate is the ability to have the freshwater 25 gallon closer to the back, and when you open the double doors, having the fill for the freshwater at the back there. And so we can kind of just back up to a freshwater potable water hose and just fill it up that way instead of having to, and this is also it's a values thing, but I personally just wasn't very drawn to the idea of having to lug out these incredibly heavy jugs pretty frequently, because there's a size limitation. They're not like, they're large, but they're not big enough to not be doing it that frequently. And so I just didn't really want the hassle of having to like unratchet freshwater and gray water jugs like this and constantly be taking them in and out to fill and dump and fill and dump. And this is a values thing. This is subjective. This is hands down the simplest way to do a freshwater gray water sink plumbing execution. But because for us, we're also going to have our sink, but we're also going to have our incorporated indoor shower, and we're going to have an outdoor shower. Because we have those elements, we've just opted to do a more standard gray water, freshwater system that you typically see in an RV, and then hose everything and connect it all accordingly. And so we will also be incorporating a water pump for the faucet as well. And what's a bit of a toss-up right now, I'm curious as to what they use, because there's the foot pumps, there's the hand pumps, which we saw in the last one. There's also electric pumps where you flick a switch and it draws power and it just pulls the water for you. The foot pumps and the hand pumps are way more efficient in terms of water conservation, but I think for a shower system, I believe we'll have to incorporate the electric one anyways, so we'll probably just tie in our kitchen sink into that system as well and just make it a little bit more efficient. But that's my thoughts on the plumbing systems. Carrying
Basically,
on.
We wanted to make sure that we minimized the amount of times that we had to lift water in and out of the van. We have fresh water in these two 6-gallon jugs right here, and this 5-gallon bucket here is for the gray water. So there's actually a door on the other side that can be accessed.
Oh, so this is okay. This is kind of smart, but this is even more storage space that has been utilized in a good area of the van for water.
That's from the outside of the van, and we can use a hose most of the time to fill up the freshwater jugs.
Okay, he made it better. He made it a little better by having this system.
And if we do have to bring them somewhere and fill them up, we can at least bring them in through that door and not have to bring them up the stairs.
Okay, this is
inside.
smart.
For the gray water, we actually drilled a hole through the floor of the van, and under the van there's a quick release hose. So we can plug in a hose and drain it that way. So again, we don't have to lift that bucket in and out of the van. To pump the water, we have a very simple marine foot pump. So this takes no electricity, and it's really easy to install. The foot pump is awesome because we can really control the flow of water quite precisely, which is great when you have a limited water supply like this. It doesn't make any noise, and I think it's just a great option for a small camper van like this.
Yeah, okay, so this is honestly sick. the difference are like my differences in preference are entirely subjective and just based on what I perceive our own, like my own needs to be for our van build. So we're going to opt to do it a little bit differently, but I think that this is the best execution of this kind of system that I've seen. I think it's incredibly practical, very functional, honestly great. Only criticism is the storage, but again, that's subjective. It's based off of our needs.
We actually made a full video explaining how this whole system works. I'll put a link to that in the description of the video if you want to check it out. The only thing I would change, and we're probably going to do that next summer, is we're going to add a P-trap, and that's going to help block the smell that sometimes comes up from the gray water.
This is such an easy thing to incorporate, and it's left out so often.
This bed was
Get ready for this bed. This bed is incredible.
a very complicated piece of furniture for us.
It was also the longest, like we've built this, like it's the bottom part is built. And it took us probably about a month because it's so interconnected and complex. And I'm 3D modeled this down to the 2x4 in order to do it correctly. And I don't know if it would have been feasible without doing that.
To design, and it was really important for us to get it right. We knew we'd be using the van as kind of a home and office on wheels, and so we knew that this area
that's table
needed to be a lot of different things. So it can be a bed, but we also wanted to be able to kind of lounge in bed and watch a movie, so we made this adjustable backrest. If we want it to be a couch, we can also take out this centerpiece, and then we have a couch here. And then what that also does is it creates two seats. So we also have a dinette where we can sit across from each other. We wanted it to be comfortable. So we didn't want to have cracks in the cushions where our shoulders and our hips would be, because then we figured it would be kind of spreading out.
It's so good.
All the time. So there's
nobody, like, that is such a huge thing, having the seams where you sleep. It's so good.
There's no seam in the mattress anywhere for the upper body.
It's
the
so
only spot
good.
Where we have seams is right here, which ends up being kind of your lower leg area. So there's not usually a lot of direct weight on the mattress there, so we don't even feel the seams. Another thing we really like is that if the bed is completely made, but we want to open up the space and have access to these two seats, we can just roll the sheets up from the bottom a little bit, put the table away, and then we've got our seats here, and then there's really minimal effort to just make the bed.
This too. So this is the extent of the bed making that I would ever want to do, and this is exactly why we opted for this option. The other pro about this that I really loved as well is that oftentimes my partner will sleep later than I do. He's more of a night owl. He'll stay up late. I'm a little bit more of an early riser. I get up a couple hours before he does. Being able to still have someone sleeping with their full legs extended, but having another person on the other side, they might even talk about this, having another person on the other side being able to set up the table and actually do some work and not interrupt one another is sold. That's what sold me. It's so good. And also the backlifting too, that is something, so we've built this base part here. We haven't incorporated, we are intending to incorporate the back hinge as well, but the thing that I'm waiting on is because we have 360 windows, so we can't utilize a similar system to they did. They also have space on either side of the bed. I'd say that's probably 6 to 9 inches on either side of the bed, which I didn't love so much because you are wasting space a little bit, but and so they'll probably show how it's used, but I'm still problem solving a way for the hinge bed to fold into a sofa, so that, and that also is a good way, I think, when it's open, to incorporate having company in the van, because some people could sit on the bench with their backs rested, some people can sit on the banquette, and then you could maybe have a little card game going, or if we're driving the vehicle and we have passengers in the back, they're at least able to sit in the back kind of facing forward, so it's not so I don't know, it's kind of strange and uncomfortable to commute in a van in the back in the bed and not in a proper seat, which I can attest to because we have done that with friends and had them and then they just usually end up napping, but you can't really be that social or anything. So this seemed like the best of all of the worlds for us
at the end of the day. So the backrest flips up, but then this part flips up as well, and we wanted to be able to have access to the storage area.
See, and then you get access to like under the garage where it's really deep. You can access that from inside of the van. It's so good. I love this bed.
From inside the van and not only from the back. So that means that we have way more accessible storage.
It's so good.
So we came up with this rope system to adjust the backrest. So we ran a copper pipe along the back of the backrest with a rope running through it. And the copper pipe sort of distributes the weight of the rope so that it doesn't curve the backrest when we're leaning.
So this is, again, this system, we're weighing to do something a little bit differently, I think. I'm kind of playing with the idea of utilizing the hydraulic bed hinges or some other way, because we won't have the same side clearances that they do as much, so it's going to be a little bit of creative problem solving, I think, for how we execute this, but
leaning on it.
This is genius.
And the rope is anchored sort of halfway down the bed with some dock cleats. So what that means is we pretty much have endless options for adjusting the backrest.
Mm-hmm.
So this is our table. It fits really easily on the side of the bed, and this serves two purposes. So it's perfectly sized to fit on the rails here. Mm-hmm. And this is actually what makes the base of the bed.
It's so good.
But we also added this flange at the bottom so that we can screw it onto the table leg and make it into a swivel table. The table leg fits on the side of the bed as well, and it's just a really simple construction with galvanized pipe and elbows. So we just slide it into the copper tube here.
This is also a really awesome low-cost alternative to the, what are they called? These things, these ones. This is like the copper solution that they have, these pivot table mounts. Their solution is so much more cost-effective. The only difference that you might not get, whereas this one might offer, is the height change option. With the copper that they've used here, I think you'd be pretty set on the height that you could use for your table. But because they're building it for themselves and to meet their own needs, I don't think that custom option is really necessary. They know what'll be comfortable for them. And they also know, because they built the system, if they need to adjust it, it's so cost effective. You can just get another pipe and fix it really easily. I'm going to spoil what we've done differently too. Actually, maybe they'll show us.
This area was also really important because we wanted to maximize storage and make sure that everything was easily accessible. So under each of our seats, we have a really deep storage area. We've got space for backpacks, extra soap, files, basically any sort of extra bulky stuff we can stuff under here, but still have easy access to it.
Spoiler alert too, this floor system here, I saw in the intro that they use this to have more dry goods storage or whatever. This is our shower. This is where we put our shower. It was so perfect. So our shower is in the floor here.
So we each have one of those, and then this step we built so that we would be able to sit at the dinette comfortably without our feet dangling. I've got really short legs. And so we doubled the step as extra food storage for heavy stuff that we didn't want to have overhead.
That's really smart too, actually. Utilizing the lower storage for heavier items, so smart.
So we made sure it was tall enough for cans, and this is where we put some of our heavier food stuff.
It's our shower,
and then
though.
You'll notice we've got drilled holes throughout the van. We've got it here, in our kitchen cabinet here, and in our overhead storage. We added all these holes, and so basically those are ventilation holes. In a small space, we knew that moisture and humidity could collect pretty easily with just two people living in here and with cooking. So we wanted to make sure that the air was always moving and that we were able to ventilate all.
So smart. This build is incredible. They think of everything. It's so good.
All the different spaces in the van. So you can see we've got tons of storage under here, and it's nice to be able to access it from inside.
Oh, this is just a small note, actually. I'm kind of interested. They have hydraulic hinges here, but they still require this piece of wood to support that. I wonder if they weren't able to support the weight of this wood in the end, because I think you don't really realize until you've built something out of wood how, like, a 2x4 on its own is not that bad, but then you start accumulating wood pieces into an element and it gets heavy quick. It gets heavy quick.
So we're able to fit 2 big blue Rubbermaid bins. One of them is kind of our outdoors bin and the other one is a tool bin. We've also got a tool kit here.
The other thing too that's really good about the way that they've built their bed is they've did it with they look like they're 1x4s, I think, in a slat system like this, and that is necessary for your mattress to breathe and to not have mold issues. You do need airflow underneath the mattress in order to not get gross. And I see this a lot with, I'll see the holes drilled in plywood. I'm not confident that that's always enough. So this to me feels like a safer play for ventilation of your mattress. And I think that the fact that they didn't do that, but they've utilized the circular ventilation in other places in their van, kind of confirms that for me.
We have these 2 overhead storage units that provide a ton of storage. So we tried to keep most heavy things down below. So we use these for clothes and other lightweight stuff.
Yeah.
This is my closet.
This is my concern with uppers, especially in our van, because we only have a fiberglass top. In these Sprinters, I'm so jealous because they can actually secure it to the framing on the interior and it's so much more sturdy. Ours, I think we're only intending to do 1 upper at the back where we can utilize kind of the cross support, like the bed frame in the upper cab, or like the upper cab storage above the passenger and the driver's seat does. I'm so jealous of them, but still, regardless of how secure it is, I think that their idea of storing heavy things down and softer things up is the way to go. Cool.
We also designed these supports, and we kind of based this off of the support for the hood of a car.
Cool.
So basically, if
That's
the door
so
is
innovative.
closed, the support is magnetized in place like this.
Neat.
And then when we want to use it, we just unclip it from the magnet, swing it down, and then it just supports in this little corner here.
And these are conversations that I'm excited to have when we get more into the design development and we're fleshing out the design of our cabinets and stuff. We'll spend a lot more time talking about different kinds of hardware options and what we can use, the pros and the cons of all of them and stuff. But for now, this is really cool.
For the latch to keep the doors closed, we just have these magnetic catches. They're not super strong, but the way that the face of the storage is built, there's this pretty deep lip here. It's almost 2 inches, so it holds everything in, so nothing's really pushing against the door.
Especially if it's closed.
Almost all of the wood in here was finished with furniture grade hemp oil, with the hemp oil giving all of the wood
She might say this, but this is another big thing when you're in a small space, being really cognizant of the finishing products that you're using and the off-gassing potential of them. There is a few finishes like hemp oil and I think like grapeseed oil. There's a few different wood finish oils that don't off-gas and are much more, what's the word I'm looking for, sterile, safer to be in the vicinity of for a long time. And this is the same concern that you'll have with paints. You'll have this concern with insulation. You'll have this concern with upholstery fabrics, all of that. The closer you can go to natural products and not petrol-based products is the safer choice.
This kind of golden glow, and then with the fabric that we ordered, which ended up being almost the exact same color, the space had this very uniform look, and so we decided to get Matt to do some paintings throughout the van to help decorate it.
This.
So he did a
So
beautiful
pretty.
heron on the sliding door. He painted a whale on the back doors. We've got our outhouse flowers inside the bathroom.
Aww.
And then another watercolor painting here.
Cool.
When the bed's made, it's 6 feet long and 54 inches wide, so a little bit wider than a double bed.
That is the same length as our bed. Our bed is 6 feet exactly too. But the nice thing about the bed design and where it differs, I guess, from trying to sleep lengthwise is there's a little bit of space for like your feet or your toes to hang off the bed, and you're not as like restricted if you end up in that position. So that's why, even though 6 feet is still very short for a bed, that would be short for anybody over 6 feet tall, especially. My partner's 5'10", so it's cutting it close for him, but just having the ability not to, just to not squish our legs in and having the freedom to extend outwards made us more comfortable with that decision.
We didn't build the bed to go to the full width of the van because we wanted to make sure there was airflow circulating around the bed. Another thing we did is
I think that might be a bit overkill. I don't think they needed that much space.
built the bed with slats instead of solid plywood to
Oh, she's saying exactly what I said earlier.
make sure that there would be ventilation so the mattress could dry out if it ever got damp.
Yeah.
One thing we really wanted to have with the bed was to each have a kind of night table. So we've got these built-in bookshelves.
This is
where we can each
cool.
put our water bottles,
I
our
love
books, glasses,
this.
stuff
This is
like
so
that.
cute.
And we also want
The only thing to be mindful, okay, I'm going to get technical on you guys from a insulative perspective. These regressed storage solutions that we'll see brought into the wall, from an insulation perspective, can be, I guess, a source of like a cool point, or I would maybe not thermal bridging entirely, but if you're able to insulate the walls of your van with 4-inch deep insulation, for example, and then you do a regressed cabinet like this, and let's close that. You do a regressed cabinet like this, you can't do the same thickness of insulation behind them. So it is a potential cooler point, just something to be mindful of. I've never seen anybody flag this or talk about it before, but it's just something that it sticks in my mind every time I see this, especially if you're trying to be mindful of your insulation optimization for winter camping and stuff. Just something to think about.
really wanted to have with the bed was to each have a kind of night table. So we've got these built-in bookshelves where we can each put our water bottles, our books, glasses, stuff like that. And we also wanted reading lights.
Cool. Yes,
we only put
the
two
best.
windows in the van, and they're both sliding windows with screens, which is great.
This is actually a good example too, where in a build not having, like, this is why not having 360 windows is really nice though, because then they're able to utilize more of that vertical, like the van wall, to incorporate things that, like, we won't be able to incorporate recessed bedside like shelving like that in our build because we have windows right there. Or back in the kitchen when they were showing the spice rack along the wall, we're at 1224, when they were showing the spice rack on the wall at the beginning, this part
like
here,
spice,
up here, and the one that was down
some
below,
bugs and our dish rack
this
skid
one down,
for
the one that was down below. We can't do any of that just because of our window capacity.
We were initially going to put some in the back as well, and then we changed our mind. We realized that the fewer windows we put in, the easier it'll be to manage temperature. So if we
That's an amazing point too. I'm bracing myself to be humbled by our van's temperature regulation.
we had put in a bunch of windows, it would sort of create a more intense greenhouse effect, and so the van would be really hot. And then the opposite.
We're looking at, I'll get to this in design development as well. I have a design idea for insulated panels that cover our windows that also don't have thermal bridging as a concern. I'll share that eventually. I still have to try and execute it, but we haven't framed around our windows yet, so
That in cold weather, we would be losing all of our heat. So we prioritized comfort and temperature control in the van. So we actually insulated the doors instead. And so there's insulation behind those wooden panels. Both windows open up pretty wide and they both have screens. And with our roof vent, we're able to get pretty good airflow in here. And then another reason why we didn't put too many windows is because we like it to be dark when we're sleeping. So we actually have a double curtain rod system. The inner rod is for our black.
I'm a little bit of the opposite. I want to embrace my circadian rhythm and have the light. So when it's dark, I want to be sleeping, but when it's awake, I want to be awake. That's, I think, just a differing in values.
Blackout curtains that we can put across at night, and then during the day if we want privacy, but we don't want total dark.
However, if you're urban camping and there's street lights, it might be a concern.
Darkness, then we've got a lighter set of curtains that we can pull across instead.
Over here is our solar power system. This powers...
Oh, so they do have a system below the top load fridge, and then the pots storage, and then the system. This is cool. Okay.
Our fridge, our lights, and our roof vent. And it's also what we use to charge all our devices. We have two 100-watt solar panels on the roof, and it's plugged into this all-in-one solar power generator. So it has the charge controller, the inverter, and the battery all in one box. And this one's called the Apex by Energy. And we can charge it a few different ways. We can charge it with the solar panels, we can charge it with the car 12-volt socket, and it can also be plugged with an extension cord into a regular wall socket.
Cool.
And probably the best thing about this is that
We're going the extra mile in our build, and we're incorporating a I forget the terminology. We are incorporating the ability for our alternator when we're driving to charge our battery system for us, so we don't have to manually plug it in like that.
It's a lithium battery, so we can store a lot of power in a small, lightweight package.
The other thing, okay, lithium is more expensive, but the nice thing about lithium, and the reason why we went that way, is that you can use greater than 50% of the power capacity. I'm afraid I'm going to butcher this because, again, electrical is not my forte. But because we plan on winter camping, also, lithium is safer to use in the cold. The batteries can get colder and not compromise the functionality of them over time. I believe they are lighter, and I think that you can get more power out of them in a smaller size, so it's a bit space saving as well.
So this whole thing weighs only 25 pounds, and we're able to expand the system with other lithium batteries. So we do intend to plug another lithium battery onto this just to have a bigger system. We're probably also going to add a third 100-watt solar panel because on shoulder seasons when it's gray for long periods, we can struggle a bit to get enough power. You may have noticed that last year
I missed how many watts they
Kodiak.
had.
We've donated that one to a woman that we've featured who was living in a yurt for 2 years without power. And the Apex is just the new version of that. So this system works really great for us. It's definitely not the perfect solution for everybody. There's pros and cons to it, but for us it was perfect. The van was already so complicated to put together that it was nice to have something that we could just put in there, plug in, and use right away.
That makes
smoke
sense.
Detector up here, carbon monoxide detector down there.
See? Carbon monoxide goes down and smoke detector goes up.
And this is the control for our heater. So we got a Webasto heater. The fuel for the heater comes from the gas tank of the van, but
This might be the same one that we have.
the power for the small fan that's in it comes from the auxiliary battery that was in the van.
I think
It's a nice
might be
dry
the same
heat,
one.
and it makes it
They're often used in semi-trucks for semi-drivers who are in their vehicles full-time as well.
easier for us to stay in the van longer, and it's also set on a thermostat so we can turn it on and it automatically turns on and off. So this is the bathroom behind this door. It was really important for us to install one of these in the van. It makes it so much more comfortable living in here. We're not always looking for public washrooms everywhere. So basically the door for the bathroom becomes a privacy wall. And
That's really smart too. Otherwise you're getting really comfortable with your partner.
saved a lot of space in the van because we didn't have to build a permanently enclosed space. So once you have...
And this is a nice way to do it as well, because you can see it's not large enough.
Living in here, we're not always looking for public...
It's not a full enclosed bathroom. It's just a tucked away like bathroom wall. I actually like this way of executing it, and the toiletry storage and the storage above is really nice too. This is actually a really good way I've seen a freestanding bathroom utilized. The footprint's much smaller.
Like washrooms everywhere. So basically the door for the bathroom becomes a privacy wall. And
Cool.
this saved a lot of space in the van because we didn't have to build a permanently enclosed space. So once you have the door open, it creates a bit of a wall, and then you can close the front curtains over here to complete the bathroom enclosure.
That's cool.
So
Yeah.
basically it's a urine diversion toilet. We use a separate, which is basically a
This is what we'll be incorporating as well.
funnel that separates liquids and solids. So the
It's really easy to DIY yourself too. Very cost effective.
liquids go into a plastic pee jug that we can empty into a toilet, and the solids go into a bucket which is lined with compostable bags and sawdust. For the bucket, we actually bought a stainless steel pot. That way it doesn't absorb smell as much as a 5-gallon plastic bucket would.
That's so smart. I didn't think about that either.
Over here we have the container for our wood chips. Danielle sewed some nice soft storage for all sorts of toiletries.
This kind of storage is so good. Like it's amazing.
More toiletries and toilet paper on the shelf up top. And then we built a small pharmacy
Aw, I love that. That's so cute.
for more storage. In terms of smell, a lot of people think that the solids are going to be what stinks more than the liquids, but it's actually usually the urine that stinks more. So what we do is that we try to keep the separate as clean as possible. We have a white vinegar spray that we use all the time, and we try to empty the jugs as often as possible. For the solids, I actually installed a 12-volt computer
This is important too. You want to ventilate your toilet system.
fan in the toilet box, and this makes a huge difference. This way, by having the fan in the toilet box, it exhausts the smells at the source and directly to the outside. So the 12-volt computer fan is in the toilet box. There's a tube going from it and exhausting through the outside.
So smart.
So we actually had to drill a hole on the side of the van and add a small louver vent. And then there's a switch here to turn it on and off.
Oh, that's cool. So you'd switch it on only when you are using it, and maybe for a bit after.
And because
Right?
it's a small computer fan, it takes very little power. For
So
this
smart.
design, we have to give full credit to our friends Vanessa and Adam on YouTube. So that's where we got the idea.
I also love the wooden toilet seat.
You'll notice that we have no shower in the van. Usually what we do is that, well, in the summer we try to swim as much as possible in lakes. We also, every once in a while, will pay to stay at a campground and use the showers there.
Okay.
Sometimes we can even pay a small fee at a campground, not to sleep over, but just to use the shower, and that's a bit cheaper. And in between showers, we use a lot of wet wipes. Here we have our front.
I think because of our intended use for our van, I am still more partial to having a shower.
Privacy curtains. On the back side, we have blackout curtains to block out the light. And then on the other side, we got this nice plant green pattern.
The other thing I wanted to do for this too, especially for winter camping, is we opted for Havelock wool for our insulation, and you can actually sew that in to your upholstery. And so I think we'll be utilizing a system like this in the summer, especially with the blackout front, to prevent the heat from cycling into the back of the cab from the front. But also in the winter, having an insulated cover to help insulate the van even further, because you can't insulate the front of your cab in any capacity. So this is much better. I like that they also used little clothespin clips here. This is super smart. Then you don't have, like, if you want to just swap it out, it's much easier than having to do anything like maybe like interwoven rings or something.
For the roof vent, we went with a Maxx-Air. It was a bit of an expensive option, but it has a really well-built rain guard on it, so it can be pouring rain outside.
That's the other thing for a Maxx-Air fan too, is you can use it when the weather is bad.
And the fan can still be open and bringing in fresh air, so that's a really amazing feature. It also has 10 speeds, so on the lowest speeds, it's very quiet. Over here at the back, you can see how big our storage space is. So we have our Rubbermaid bins here. We have our extra jug of water. We have a folding kayak, which is pretty awesome.
This is cool. So they were able to incorporate something like that so big in their build.
Awesome for enjoying the outdoors,
Wow.
going out on the water. It's not a perfect design. There's a few things that could be improved upon, but overall, it's pretty amazing that you can fold up a huge kayak like this. And
This is just a side thing. Hold on.
well, it's pretty.
This is unrelated. I've noticed in this build that the electrical systems all seem to be surface mounted. You can see here this copper pipe that runs along this nightlight here, and I noticed at the back in their kitchen the conduit running up the wall as well. I think in terms of like practicality, if there was ever any issues with your electrical systems, this is actually a really aesthetic way of making it more minimal and kind of cleaning it up. And I actually do really like the idea of having it surface mounted, although it's generally frowned upon aesthetically to surface mount your conduit or your electrical wiring. I think that the trade-off of not having to take your walls down if there's any issues with your electrical, it also, I think, would be a little bit safer because you know that the interior of the van like this here is going to be dry, whereas behind your walls there could be buildup of condensation, potential water leaks that you won't catch right away because you can't see it. So I actually think this is a really intelligent aspect of their build that they didn't touch on. This video is over in 2 minutes and it hasn't been brought up, but I wanted to flag that.
Amazing that you can fold up a huge kayak like this and fit it into the trunk of a vehicle. And we have 2 folding chairs here and just plenty of space for everything we need.
Are we pretty much done? I'm gonna say we're done. This is such a good build. My little technologist heart is so happy because not only is it like aesthetically pleasing, but they've really accounted for everything. And this is a really awesome example of utilizing as much space as you can and also executing so many interrelated components that all move around each other but work with each other harmoniously or synergistically in really awesome ways. Again, I'm obsessed with this bed. This is my favorite bed design I've ever seen. 10 out of 10, so fantastic. If I ever did like a sprinter build or something similar, I would 1000% be drawing a ton of inspiration from this layout. Obviously, I'd probably do something a little bit different in terms of finishes so that it was a little bit more custom to me, but the layout in this van is so practical, so amazing. 10 out of 10. I love it. It's so good. Amazing.